And welcome back to another chat, another perspectives. And I'm not sure what I'm going to call this, probably something like food for thought. So if that changes on the opening titles, don't worry about that. I don't use clickbait titles either. All this must see and I couldn't believe it and all this, clickbaitish titles. So I think I'll probably keep mine obscure to keep away the curious. In the last chat I had on my thought experiment, and I was using some kind of ideas from Gurdjieff, and I was just thinking actually after that, another one of Gurdjieff's ideas. In fact, I was just thinking about it yesterday over dinner, because as I was eating, I was thinking about food, as one does when one is eating. And Gurdjieff's idea around food, he was saying that the human body actually requires and takes in 3 types of food. And each type gives certain different kinds of nutrients to the human body. Without going into details, the 3 types are regular physical type of food, air, and the third one, impressions. Impressions meaning whatever our senses take in, any kind of external impression that we take in. And he was saying that the human body can live longest without food. The human body can go maybe a week or more without food. And if you're having just water, for example, you can go much longer, the human body, just on water, as we know from, unfortunately, those people on hunger strike. So that's the first type of food that the human body can go longest without. And that's the regular food that we think about in this context. The second type is air. And the air we breathe is very important because it also gives the body certain nutrients. And although we think of the air as being nitrogen, oxygen, and some neon gases and carbon, very important for life, we think those are only the elements of air, but there's other elements that we're not aware of, or science is not aware of, that also the human body can take in and absorb. And of course, it's no coincidence that breathing exercises and the manner of inhalation and exhalation are part of many kind of traditions, meditative and developmental traditions. And also air, where we cannot go without air for very long, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and then maybe more and anything more than 4 minutes we become brain dead. And then the third one is impressions, all the stimuli that we take in from outside. And in fact, strangely enough, Gurdjieff says that without outside stimulus, we would shut down very quickly. And I guess we don't know that because we are never without stimulus. Even when we're sleeping, the body's picking up external stimuli. Even if we put ourselves into sensory deprivation or into a black room or a black box, our senses would still be alert, picking up. We've never actually closed down all our senses. We may be in an environment of reduced senses, but our senses are still alert. So we don't have an experience of, could we survive without our senses? So on those 3 levels, we know that the food we eat is important. As the adage goes, garbage in, garbage out. So with all this fast food and high saturated fats and sugars, and the manufactured processed food is a cause of many woes and worries in human health, physical health and psychological health, emotional health. So we know food's important. So that's fairly common sense. Although these days I don't know what sense is or what common is. But anyway, And the second part then is the air. And we breathe automatically. And perhaps if we were more aware of our breath, we could get more benefit from this. And this is something which is talked about, that the body can absorb certain amount of elements from the air and then it gets exhaled. But certain bodies can keep more elements from the air, i.e. more nutrients. But that depends on how aware we are. So if we're breathing in and out every day, it becomes an instinctual motor activity. We're not aware of it. Of course, if we were aware all the time of our breathing, we may find life quite difficult if you're walking around going, I'm aware of my breathing, I'm aware of my breathing. But if we can be conscious that we are breathing in a kind of step back observational state and just more aware of that, then potentially, according to Gurdjieff, we can actually absorb more nutrients from the air. It can be more benefit to us and saying that, I think the air and healthy air is very important, because the air in a natural environment, in the forest, with trees, and the air we breathe is a much higher quality than these polluted, smog-ridden cities. So even that, being in nature and the air we breathe, and being in a polluted or an urban environment, is similar to the food, physical food, whether we have good quality organic or naturally grown food. Doesn't need to be certified organic, but naturally grown food as opposed to processed food. Polluted air, natural air, very similar. So I think that's understandable as well, because we are aware of when we feel ill or nauseous from air pollution or lower quality air. Now, impressions. This is something that I think is much more relevant in today's saturated world to focus on, because food and air has been more or less consistent for a very, very long time of human culture. But the impressions has very rapidly changed in the last, first off in the last century, because of the communication technologies and radio and television. And now, of course, it's gone through the roof because of the internet and social media and all our devices and phones. So all the time we are receiving these very rapid visual stimuli, but it's the quality. And I remember, I think I've said this in a previous talk, I quoted from the historian Oswald Spengler. And Oswald Spengler, who 100 years ago, last century, wrote about the decline of the West and how the Western world is already entering its winter of decline. But one phrase stood out for me, which he said, and he said that nihilism raises its head once vulgarity becomes more prescient in culture than elements of decency. And as we can see, there is high degrees of vulgarity in our societies and in our social media and in our entertainments and I mentioned this before, so I don't want to labor on it, but that vulgarity is becoming part of the food that we are ingesting. And so we don't just get ill or malnourished from physical food, or we become lower in health or malnourished from the quality of the air. We become malnourished through the quality of the impressions we take in, through the quality of the information and the type of content of that information, whether it's vulgar music songs and music videos that belong to the culture industry, the manufactured industry of subliminals and very distasteful ritualistic type of music videos, from the type of zombified films that we're getting, or the trite, trashy films, and all this stuff. And also of the propaganda that we've talked about, and how a lot of information is actually psyop, psychological operations of deliberate planting of ideas and narratives in the information through our news and other channels. Even our education is being corrupted. So all this stimuli is a very corrupted, polluted food which we are taking in. So we have to be very, very mindful of the food we put into our body. So of course we talk about the vibration of the food. If a certain natural food is, let's say, grown by ourselves or from a local grower, it has a certain vibration, a higher quality vibration. If we have natural air, unpolluted air, air from, let's say if you're in a forest or you're by the sea, and all this air again has a higher vibration. The same with the impressions we receive. If we feed on lower vibrational impressions, it lowers our vibrational health and the health of our body, mind and spirit. So these are things to be aware of, which I'm sure is, we are all can see that in the life around us. But another thing within this philosophy, let's say, or philosophy psychology, is that during a particular day, a human being has a certain amount of energy. And the energy that they accumulate, they tend to put out or use up or waste. And in the daily life of a general person, normal person's daily life, they would tend, more often than not, to use up or waste all the energy that they have accumulated for that day's usage. So if they use up all the energy, there's no energy left for anything else for them to use. So if an individual uses up in their life by putting out all the energy through their activities, there's nothing that they can retain if they wanted to work on themselves, to use that phrase, or any self-development. They don't have the energy for it. And we see that also in today's modern life. People are tired, people are drained. It's not, as I mentioned in the Bardo Times, it's not motion sickness we're suffering from, it's monitor sickness. Monitors from our screens, we feel dizzy from all these, interaction maybe with our computers. We drain maybe from the traveling, from to and from work. We drain from our going out in life and having to go shopping. We're just exhausted. And so we don't retain any energy to actually use for ourselves, our perceptive capacities, our cognitive capacities, our awareness. That all takes energy. You know how it is, if you're drained, you don't want to think about, let's say, philosophical concepts. You don't want to maybe watch a film or something that makes you think, a documentary or an interview. You just want to watch some candy, just like something easy for the brain. And we see that, or we hear that all the time, because there's no energy left in the body to utilize for any developmental purposes. So energy is wasted because there's a high amount of seepage, energy seepage, during everyone's daily life. And this applies to everybody, myself included. We all seep energy, but we can seep or waste energy in ways that can be plugged up or guarded. So we have to utilize energy if we're working physically, if we're going out, if I'm writing, if I'm making a video, I use energy. But that's normal energy. There's still more that can be retained, but we waste it. How do we waste it? Because we waste it on things such as useless chatter. And I hope this doesn't get categorized as useless chatter. Gossip, for example, useless twittering and texting and whatever. You get my point. Useless thinking like idle fantasies, creative imagination, and certain creative daydreaming / imagination can be useful in formulating inspirational ideas, but just blind fantasies and these can drain energy. And also, of course, the negative emotions. If we have anger and fear, and because just becoming angry, and I was angry just yesterday because the damn sheep from the field next door came into my garden and ate a lot of my vegetables. All my cabbages it ate, which I recently planted. I was angry, I visualized a lamb kebab, getting my revenge by eating a lamb kebab. I wanted to, I wanted to get this lamb, but you see, and then I realized that I was just wasting energy because I felt tense. So the body tenses up, and then the body uses motor energy. The mind uses energy by thinking these things like lamb kebab, and then your emotions waste energy because you have this anger. So all around, you're just throwing out and wasting energy. And there's many other examples of how we may be annoyed by someone or something, and then we tense up. Even the way we sit when we're working, maybe we don't realize that our body is tense when we're working or sitting. All these elements contributes to energy seepage. And I think at this time, when we're being bombarded by vulgar stimuli, we need to have energy to pay attention and to be aware of this stimuli, so we can buffer it, we can close it off, and we can make a conscious choice not to take it in. Doesn't affect us. We try to basically frequency out of that zone, so it can't match us with frequency out. So I just thought I'd talk about these things because quite literally, when I thought about them, they became food for thought. And if we can put the idea of food into our thoughts, then perhaps we can be more aware of how to retain our energy, in the sense of needing the correct or the finer qualities of physical food, air food, and the stimuli sensation food. So it's important that we are on the right level, let's say, the right frequency to connect with something that we can benefit from. Because if we're not on the right, entrained on the right kind of wavelength, we miss something important. And actually, by another coincidence, just this morning, as I was flicking through a book, as I sometimes do, I pick up and read through books, I came across this story, which I thought that fits in with what I was thinking about, needing to be on the right wavelength to pick up finer information or communication. So I'm going to finish here by reading it. It's a short one, so I won't keep you too long. Actually, it comes from a book called A Perfumed Scorpion by Idris Shah, and it's the final entry in part 1 of the book, which is called The Visitor from Space. And at the end of that, there's a story, and it's introduced as a warning that we should not miss the opportunity of communicating in the right way, of receiving the right information. And here's a story. Scientists from this world had positioned a satellite to broadcast a call to any passing interplanetary being, to show that there was intelligent life on Earth. The apparatus was linked by a translation computer which was designed to put the visitor's words or signals into English. Sure enough, before very long, a superior being on a space mission came across this device. Recognizing it, he dismounted from his ship and spoke into the apparatus. He said, "Earthlings, I am a Superman, out of space. As the automatic translator began to type out this message, the scientists on Earth were hopping up and down in excitement. But the phrase, "Earthlings, I am a Superman out of space," was printed out due to a lack of harmony between the vibrations of the two parties as, "People of dirt, I am a virile heterosexual without an apartment." So the message was interpreted as a hoax because it was too trendy and apparently nonsense by the serious Earthmen. And the spaceman, well, he was rather too serious-minded also. He decided that as there was no reply, the satellite must be broken, so he fed it to his space cat. So the harmony of vibrations for the correct communication, or lost in translation, bum-de-bum. Okay, signing off. That's my food for thought for the day, for the time being. Thanks again for joining me, and wherever you are, I wish you well. May you be healthy, sane, and stay grounded. Cheers.